Imagine waking up one morning. Your neighbor is dead. By the end of the week, half your town is gone. A year later, nearly half of Europe has vanished. No bombs, no wars, no modern weapons. Just one invisible killer. It spread faster than anyone could understand. People blamed witches. They blamed poison. They blamed God. But the real enemy was much smaller than anyone could imagine. This is the story of the Black Death, the deadliest pandemic in European history.
Europe in the 1300s looked nothing like today. Cities were crowded. The streets were filthy. Garbage was dumped outside. Animals wandered freely. And rats were everywhere. No one paid attention to them. They had always been there. But these weren't ordinary rats. Hidden in their fur were tiny fleas carrying a deadly bacterium. The disease had traveled thousands of miles along trade routes from Asia. Merchant ships unknowingly carried death across the sea. Every port they visited became another starting point. Every marketplace became another trap. Within weeks, entire cities were infected, and almost nobody knew what was happening. The nightmare had only begun. Fear spread faster than the plague itself. The moment someone coughed, people ran. Families locked their doors. Neighbors stopped speaking to each other. Parents carried their children away, hoping to outrun the invisible killer. Churches filled with desperate people praying for a miracle. But every day, the bells rang again and again. Noble families abandoned their castles. Villagers left everything behind. Some fled into the forests. Others disappeared into the mountains. It didn't matter. The plague followed wherever people went. Markets that were once packed with merchants became completely silent. Homes stood empty. Windows remained shut. Entire streets looked abandoned. The dead outnumbered the living. Funeral carts rolled through the cities from sunrise to sunset. There weren't enough gravediggers. There weren't enough priests. There wasn't enough time. Soldiers sealed the city gates, hoping to stop the disease. Instead, they trapped thousands of frightened people inside. Many believed this was the end of the world. And as smoke rose above the rooftops, even the cities themselves seemed to be dying. By now, Europe was no longer fighting a disease. It was fighting fear itself.
The worst part was, no one knew what caused the plague. Without answers, people were willing to try almost anything. Medieval doctors searched through ancient books, hoping to find a forgotten cure. Apothecaries filled glass bottles with strange mixtures of herbs, oils, and mysterious powders. Some patients swallowed bitter potions. Others were covered in medicinal plants. One of the most common treatments was bloodletting. Doctors believed that removing bad blood would drive the illness out of the body. They also used leeches, hoping that tiny creatures would draw the disease away. Families watched in silence, desperate for anything that might save their loved ones. Candles burned through the night as physicians mixed new remedies, refusing to give up. But nothing seemed to work. The shelves slowly emptied. The medicines ran out. And despite every desperate attempt, the plague continued to spread. Sometimes, the cure was almost as frightening as the disease itself.
Out of all the terrifying images left behind by the Black Death, one became unforgettable. The Plague Doctor. Dressed head to toe in thick leather, his face hidden behind a long, bird-like mask, he looked less like a physician and more like something from a nightmare. People believed the plague spread through poisoned air, so inside the mask's hollow beak, doctors packed dried flowers, herbs, spices, and fragrant oils. They hoped the sweet smell would filter out the deadly sickness. In reality, it offered very little protection. But no one knew that at the time. The long wooden cane served another purpose. Doctors used it to examine patients or keep a safe distance without touching them. As they walked through silent streets filled with fear, many saw them as the last symbol of hope. Others believed their arrival meant only one thing: death had already arrived. Even today, More than 700 years later, the haunting silhouette of the plague doctor remains one of history's most chilling symbols, a reminder of a time when humanity fought an invisible enemy with little more than courage and hope. When the plague finally began to fade, Europe was almost unrecognizable. Fields were left empty. Entire villages had vanished. Castles stood silent. And millions of lives were gone forever. But history was about to take an unexpected turn. With so many workers lost, those who survived suddenly became incredibly valuable. For the first time, many farmers could demand higher wages, better working conditions, and greater freedom. The old feudal system, which had ruled Europe for centuries, began to crack. Power slowly shifted away from wealthy landowners. Trade started to recover. New businesses appeared. Towns expanded. Universities attracted more students. Ideas spread faster than ever before. Many historians believe that the Black Death didn't just end millions of lives. It helped create a completely new Europe. A Europe that would eventually give rise to the Renaissance, scientific discovery, and a very different future. Sometimes, the darkest chapters in history leave behind the biggest changes. And the world that emerged after the Black Death would never be the same again.
Today, Europe is alive with bustling cities, modern technology, and millions of people going about their daily lives. It's hard to imagine that these same lands were once consumed by fear and silence. The Black Death eventually came to an end, but its shadow never truly disappeared. It changed kingdoms, it reshaped economies, it transformed societies, and it altered the course of human history forever. The plague doctor's mask became more than just protective clothing. It became a symbol of one of humanity's darkest chapters, a reminder of how fragile civilization can be. All of this may have started with something as small as a flea, a tiny creature that helped change the fate of an entire continent. History often remembers kings, great battles, and powerful empires. But sometimes, the events that shape the world begin with things too small for anyone to notice. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's greatest mysteries, subscribe for more incredible true stories from the past, because the next chapter of history may be even more unbelievable than this one.